If you want to have a healthy, happy, securely attached relationship, no matter, again, what your history looks like, no matter what your age or your current set of circumstances, it is absolutely possible. And so please become aware of what attachment is. Please know that there's a lot of support out there, and there's people like myself who would be more than happy to work with you to get you, again, into that securely attached, healthy, functional relationship.
Welcome to yourbrilliance.com. I'm your host, Amy Waterman. When your love life isn't working, who do you blame? Either men are the problem or you're the problem. And if I could take a guess, I would bet that there is a small part of you that thinks that you're the one doing something wrong. If only you could learn to flirt better or text better or say the right things, then all of your problems would be over. But there is a piece of the puzzle you're missing. It explains why you feel anxious in relationships, why men pull away, why we're attracted to partners who hurt us, and so much more. It's called attachment theory. And once you see it, you will start to see it everywhere. Our guest for today, Dr. Dora Wolfe, is a specialist in attachment theory. She's the CEO and clinical director of Wolfe Behavioral Health. She's a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in trauma and attachment, and she has over 20 years of experience utilizing a holistic approach to treatment. Welcome, Dr. Wolfe.
Hi, Amy. Thank you for having me.
So I have to start out, of course, with the question, what is attachment theory then?
Sure. So when we're talking about attachment theory, basically we are talking about that first connection that we have with our primary caretaker. So it's typically the mother-baby bond. And that bond is not only responsible for the psychological template of what we're going to expect in future relationships, but it's also very important for the neurophysiological development of parts of our brain. And that's parts of our brain that are responsible for things like empathy and social and emotional intelligence and flexible thinking and affect regulation. So that initial bond that we form and the type of connection that we have with that primary caretaker is really pivotal and foundational in terms of what's going to roll out for the rest of our lives in terms of our relationships.
So I could think that some people might be thinking, that's okay, but that was back then. And we're adults now, and as adults, we have the power of choice. We can choose who we're attracted to. We can choose our behavior in those relationships. So how much really can those childhood experiences shape us as adults?
Well, I think that they primarily shape us as adults. The idea that, again, the way the brain forms and the expectations that are formed around that early bond really kind of guide us into what we're attracting into our lives, even as adults. And so the brain is malleable, and it is impacted by each subsequent experience we have. But if we walk into relationships with certain expectations and drawing in certain types of attachment figures into our lives based off of, again, our early experience, then you can see how those patterns of behavior continue to be ingrained in us both psychologically and neurophysiologically.
So I'm going to ask a really basic question. Does that mean that if you've got good parents, you should have good relationships later in life, and if you have bad parents, you have bad relationships?
It is not that parallel, but the basic tenet of it would be yes. If we have good enough parents, we don't expect perfection, but the idea that when we talk about attachment, we talk about the 4 S's, and that safety, security, soothing, and the idea of being able to be connected to a primary caretaker with all those expectations being first and foremost is extremely important. And when we don't get those things, the other extreme of it would be kids who are neglected or in abusive relationships. Again, that works to not only change the patterns in the brain, but also that psychological template. So in a nutshell, yes, if we have good enough parents, we are likely to have good relationships moving forward. And the exact opposite is true if we do not have what we need when we're young.
So, what are the signs that if somebody is listening to this and thinking, okay, so I know that I have a pattern with the sort of partners I attract, does that mean I have attachment issues? What are the signs that somebody might be struggling with this?
Well, I think one of the predominant signs is that if, as you reach adulthood, if you find that you're not able to engage in successful relationships, if you find that your needs aren't met in relationships, if you don't feel safe being vulnerable, if you don't feel connected, if you don't feel that your basic needs are being met, and that you kind of struggle, and maybe there's a lot of arguing that's going on, it just seems like you're not fitting uh, in a place that feels like a home, in a place where you're obtaining a lot of comfort from the relationship.
So, I'm thinking this isn't obviously something that we struggle with. It's also something I assume our partners struggle with. Could some of those issues be caused by our partner's attachment issues?
Absolutely. And what we know is that about 50% of us are securely attached, and about 50% of us are insecurely attached. Like has a tendency to attract like. And so we see a lot of these securely attached people who will end up in relationships with other securely attached people. And the same is true for insecurely attached people. One of the most common patterns we see in insecurely attached people are uh, people who are avoidants have a tendency to attract people who are anxious. And basically, what that means is it becomes a push pull dynamic in the relationship. So that the anxiously attached person, the person who never quite feels like their needs are completely met or met enough, oftentimes will get labeled as being needy or clingy in a relationship. And one of my kind of favorite ways of tempering that is to say that we are only as needy as our unmet needs. And so, if again, they are able to draw into their life people who actually would meet their needs, we would see a shift in that attachment pattern. But when they draw in people who give to them what they expect, which is their needs not being met, which is typically an avoidant who kind of shuts down and pulls away, then you can see this dynamic that comes into play, where there's this constant chasing and pushing and pulling, and the dynamic of the relationship between the two.
Is there any relationship between gender and attachment styles? Because often there's these stereotypes of the needy woman and the distant man.
Yeah, if you take a look at things, a lot of times you will see women who may be more anxious in their attachment patterns. And a lot of this comes not only from the early attachment experience with the primary caretaker, but how we socialize girls moving forward in the educational system and just kind of in society at large. Same thing with boys. Boys may end up insecurely attached with that avoidant pattern because, again, as they move through school and society at large, the idea of being needy or expressing their emotions is something that is frowned upon. And so it's much easier for men to shut down, and if they're insecurely attached, to present as avoidant than it is to be anxious. And so you can see how we start with those early attachment patterns, and then societally, they can also be reinforced.
So let's say that someone is listening to this and thinking, so this means that my partner is not just being a typical male. It means that he's actually avoidant. How could we spot those signs of avoidant attachment in our partner? Like, what are some of the you've given some, like they don't like to have any needs, they don't fulfill your needs. What are some other ones?
Well, I think one of the things that we look for is that, again, when we're entering into a partnership, we want the idea that of this secure attachment, right? We want to be protected, we want to be soothed. Our attachment figure is somebody that meets our needs, and in times of distress, they are people we can turn to feel again protected and soothed. And so one of the things that we notice is sometimes people will get along quite well when everything is okay, And then once we're in a dysregulated state where we're relying on our partner pulls away, right? When we have needs, because maybe we lost our job, or something is going on in our life that is cueing us to go to our attachment figure to be soothed and to be comforted. And in that dynamic, we then see the partner pull away. And that leaves people feeling very frustrated and very vulnerable. And then if we have a partner telling us, you're too much, you're too needy, it reinforces that, again, what we're feeling isn't okay, when in truth, we all need that, right? We are all going to feel anxious, and we need partners to be there to support us and protect us and soothe us.
So one of the things that we often do then as women is that we try to dampen down our needs or get our needs met on our own. We feel that shame of having needs. But I would assume that if you're insecurely attached, that there's more to it than that, because if you're securely attached, you still have needs, but those don't cause so much conflict in your relationship. If you're insecurely attached and you have those needs, how are you expressing them in a way that actually makes things worse in your relationship?
Sure. Well, what ends up happening is that, again, we go back to kind of that brain being regulated, right? Being able to self-soothe. And so if I am feeling anxious or stressed about something, and I go to my attachment figure to be regulated or soothed or comforted, part of that also belies me, that I am able to take that and then be able to calm myself. Or if they're not available in the moment, that I am able to hang on until they are available and be able to self-soothe, so that just the idea of them comforts me. And when we're insecurely attached, we see people having difficulty with that. So when I'm feeling anxious, I'm really feeling anxious, and I need that attachment figure immediately, and I need them to do the right thing. And sometimes they are very stuck, because no matter what they do, I'm not feeling better because I'm too dysregulated. And so it's the idea that we need to be able to work on ourselves as well, so that we can present in that partnership in a way that it's going to be productive and successful.
So that actually brings up another question. So if you are insecure and your partner's insecure as well, can you change your attachment style? Like, are you stuck in this forever, I guess is the question.
No, and I think that's one of the most fascinating things, and one of the reasons why I love doing this work so much, is that, again, it doesn't matter where we come from, it matters where we want to go and what we're willing to do to get there. And so the idea that awareness is really key, because people end up in these dynamics and they don't even understand what attachment is. So they don't know how to correct it, and they just kind of continue in these vicious cycles. So first and foremost, the most important thing, I think, is just awareness of what attachment is, and understanding your attachment history and what attachment style you have. There is no right or wrong. There is just the idea of, this is what is, and is this fulfilling and rewarding in my life, or would I like to change this dynamic? And most people with an insecure attachment style would say, there's at least things I would like to change, because attachment's on a continuum. So I could be insecurely attached, but more on the right side, let's say, of the continuum, or I can be insecurely attached and all the way over here on the continuum where I really struggle. And so if we have two people who are insecurely attached, they become aware of what attachment is and what their patterns are. They can work together to what we call earned security. And sometimes they may need help, intervention, maybe some therapy around those issues. And sometimes just being aware of them and learning about them on their own can help them get to where it is they want to go.
So I want to know a little bit more about that. So if we have a couple right now who's stuck in that anxious avoidant pattern where one feels needy, one keeps pulling away, what are some concrete things they can do to get better? And let's maybe even make this more difficult. Let's say that the avoidant partner is resistant to the idea of self-awareness, and maybe the avoidant partner isn't sure that there's anything quote unquote wrong with him, the way he is normal. How can the anxious partner make a change in her relationship?
So that's a great question. And I think it's probably one of the most common dynamics that we see in couples when they present for treatment is almost that exact same scenario. The man is typically the avoidant. He is the one that thinks that nothing may be wrong. He's resistant to treatment, all of those things. I think what ends up happening is that when one of the partners is aware of what attachment is, and they start to work on themselves, right? So one of the ways that we're able to work on ourselves is through things like changing those parts of the brain that cause us to become so dysregulated. Because think about it, when we're dysregulated and I'm having an interaction with you, I am going to perceive that interaction much differently than if I'm calm and regulated. So now I start to build it. When we talk about things like mindfulness, meditation, things that build up that part of the brain. So now on my own, I'm able to regulate better, right? So I am able to stay in a regulated state better when I'm in an interaction with you. And then when I'm regulated through all of my other relationships and all the other things that I do, I start to build up a sense of self. And I start to build up a sense of confidence. And that's also something that people who are insecurely attached lack. So now if I'm doing this work on my own and I'm feeling more aware of who I am and more confident in who I am and I'm able to be more regulated, now I'm presenting to you this way. And you are either going to change your pattern of interaction because you realize it's a benefit to both of us and you may want to start to work on yourself. Or now I take a look at you and say, I don't think you're who I'm supposed to be with, right? Because I'm standing here and I am able to present in a way that I expect now in return, and you're not giving that to me. So we see sometimes that happening as well, right? But the most important thing is that somebody make that shift, and we hope that the partner then will follow suit. But sometimes that doesn't happen. But then we know that that person who has done the work is much more likely to go out there and attract a securely attached partner into their life.
And this is work that you can help clients with. You've got your own private practice in the Chicago area. Tell us a little bit about the work you do with clients.
So when I have people come in, and sometimes they will come in separately, sometimes they'll come in as a couple. One of the things that we come across is that I've worked with people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who have never had a secure relationship. And so what ends up happening is that that therapeutic relationship becomes the first secure attachment relationship that they have. So I become the attachment figure. I become the secure base, because what happens is therapy is a relationship like any other. And those dynamics of insecurity will start to play out in the therapy relationship. And so through awareness of what's going on and being able to stay regulated and be a secure base for somebody, it helps them to shift their behavior. And then once they recognize, oh, this is what a secure attachment relationship looks like, now I can go out into the world, and whether it's with my friends, whether it's with my children, whether it's with a romantic partner, I now can present differently and therefore interact differently and attract differently into my life.
That sounds wonderful. And for those of you watching, if this is something you would like to learn more about, or you would just like to check out Dr. Wolfe's other work, we have a link for you. Just go to yourbrilliance.org/wolf. That's yourbrilliance.org/WOLFE. Thank you so much, Dr. Wolfe, for coming onto the show. And I wondered if you had any last message you would like to leave our viewers with.
Thank you. I do. I would just like everyone to know that, again, if you want to have a healthy, happy, securely attached relationship, no matter, again, what your history looks like, no matter what your age or your current set of circumstances, it is absolutely possible. And so please become aware of what attachment is. Please know that there's a lot of support out there, and there's people like myself who would be more than happy to work with you to get you, again, into that securely attached, healthy, functional relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you out there for watching. Now, did you have any insights or aha moments while watching this interview? If so, tell us about them in the comments. And for more interviews like these, subscribe to Your Brilliance TV here on YouTube, and then come on over to yourbrilliance.com for more tips and insights on how you can live your most brilliant life. See you next time.